Hello, everyone. Welcome to Preparing for Departure, Tips for Staying Connected While Letting Go. We're so glad to have you here with us. My name is Maggie Dillon Katz, and I work for CIP, the College Internship Program, and I'm the National Presentation Coordinator and do a lot of presenting to professionals and parents on the transition process. And I'm here with my colleague.
My name is Matthew Koshorik, and if any of your students have attended our summer program or if you have worked with the summer program, you'll recognize it's me by saying it's a great day at CIP. So like Margaret said, my name is Matthew Koshorik. I'm the National Summer Program Coordinator. I'm very excited to be with you guys today. We're wrapping up our 12th summer program of the season. It ends this Friday. We had a lot of fun this year. I think it was about 115 people that interviewed, and we had a lot of students. I want to say over 100 students attend the summer program this year, which is amazing.
Yeah, exciting. Great. Well, today, the reason we're doing this session is we've had a lot of parents ask us if we could do more to help them, support them in the transition of letting go as their student goes off. And we really want to emphasize that this is not about in any way you're going to continue being a parent, you're going to continue to stay connected, but the whole point of this session is to help you with supporting your student with becoming more autonomous and more independent. So our goals for this session for today are to share some research with you, and some of it, most of the emphasis tonight will be on communication, ways you can support your student through the kinds of questions you ask, and also through the way you communicate by cell phone, by social media, once your student is off at CIP or perhaps at college. And we're also going to help you by giving you some resources. We're going to record this session so it's available to you, so make sure we know if you'd like to have it. And there are some resources we can share with you after the event as well that we're happy to send you. We also want to help you to find new ways or ways to lower your anxiety, because it is a big change and you've been doing such an amazing job supporting your student, and now things have to shift some as they go on to the next stage in the way you parent. And there's nothing about tonight about making you feel badly or wrong. If you haven't started some of the things we've suggested, it's never too late. You can always start working on them from tonight onward, and as your student and you keep moving forward. We will be taking some questions toward the end of the evening. We won't do it as we're going through our slideshow, but we will do it at the end. We'll try to answer as many as we can. If we don't answer all your questions, we're also going to refer you to some of our staff, our admissions coordinators, but we'll do the best we can. So here you'll see a picture of myself and with my daughter, and the reason I have this picture is that I went through this process myself just over 2 years ago. When I say that, she headed off to college. She actually went overseas for her first term, and it was a big change. And even though I actually was a transition coordinator and counselor, it was a huge shift from being a parent every single day, seeing her all the time, and going to that big sudden change where she's not with me. And I'm going to share just one short paragraph. I wrote a story, the story about actually taking her the day she went to college, and it's in this book called Breakthrough. And the title of it is Taking Flight, Staying Connected While Letting Go. That's the title for tonight's session. So I'll just read the first paragraph, and if it interests you, I'm happy to share the whole story, and a lot of the tips come from this chapter as well. The moment had come. I had imagined this moment for years, wondering how I would get through it. I thought I was ready. I thought I'd be able to keep myself together. But when the moment arrived, it was harder, more poignant, more bittersweet, and more emotional than I had imagined, and I had imagined it would be hard. So tonight I really am with you as you go through this change, because it's something I live every single day, and we're going to move on to giving you some more tips so you can move through this transition. So we'll go on to the next slide here. And the reason we have this picture of a big long view is there's an author, William Ury, who wrote a book called The Power of the Positive No. And the reason I love this concept, which is called taking a look from the balcony, is to help support you that when you get too close to, say something happens with your student that's very upsetting, that makes you anxious or nervous, we tend to want to rescue our child, our student. But instead of doing that automatically, push the pause button and go up to the balcony. And what I mean by that is take the long view, and the long view is what can I do in this situation that'll help my student become more autonomous? If I rescue him or her, will that help my student? So rather maybe ask questions or pause. And a really quick example for myself was my daughter she lived in an apartment with a Danish student, and she was really looking forward to getting introduced to other young people through her Danish apartment mate. And her Danish apartment mate had a lovely apartment, but she used to come home and go into her bedroom and shut the door. And that was pretty much it. There was no socializing. It was a big disappointment for my daughter, and actually as a parent, I was very disappointed. And probably like you get, I'm spending money for this, and you get all mad. And instead, I was mad, but I asked my daughter how was it working out, and asked her questions, and I could see that she was actually coping with it well, and she found other ways to make friends and got along with this same apartment mate. So she found solutions for herself, and I didn't need to go in and say, you know, she needs a different apartment mate. There are times when she might have needed to do that, but in this situation, she came to the decision on her own that it was working, and she came up with other solutions. So again, go to the balcony before you become impulsive, and you are going to be upset, but try to pause and go to the balcony. So Matt's going to talk about the next slide.
So with this picture, what do you do for your student, and how much support is too much? I was working with a student this summer, and at the end of the program, he said to me, he sat me down and said, Matt, you know, I never realized how much my mom and dad do for me. And with all the things that we do in the summer program with laundry, cooking instruction, picking up after yourselves, he just never really understood, and it was a big eye-opener for him to say. And when I told the parents that, they're like, yeah, maybe I do too much. And we kind of worked on some different strategies on, you know, what is too much and how to kind of map that out, making realistic goals. And one of the things that keeps sticking in my head with cooking instruction, he didn't like the way we made homemade pizzas, and his pizza just didn't really look the greatest. And he says to me, you know, Matt, I don't know if I want to learn how to cook. I think I'm just going to leave it to the professionals. And it was just a funny comment. But yeah, and then with students gaining confidence in these different things, and then trying to go outside their comfort zone into be in different social situations, that's been actually the feedback that we've gotten in 2010, 2011, 2012, and 2013 with our surveys from our students.
Yeah, that it really helps to build their confidence when they get the opportunity to move out of their comfort zone a little bit. And the next slide is about this. One of the expressions that I like to use, and I've taken it from Harlan Cohen and Cynthia Jenkins, who you can see there, wrote a book called The Naked Roommate. And I recommend this book for parents. There's a parent version, and there's a workbook for students. And it's in preparation for this transition, this next step, generally for college or going into a program. But the term is, get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Now, all of us, to grow, we need to move out of our comfort zone. We just don't have growth if we stay all the time in our comfort zone. And what some research has shown, and this is through Brian Hark from UCLA, he's a dean there, has shown that students who are unwilling to move out of their comfort zone have a higher rate of failing out of college. And if they even knew that it's a normal feeling to be uncomfortable in a new situation, that it's actually normal to feel a little lonely. It's normal to feel like maybe you're walking on sand or the ground shifting underneath you. So we want students to understand, and we actually want you as parents to remember and know it is going to be uncomfortable. We don't want it so extreme, like a spectrum where they're so uncomfortable that they're having panic attacks. That's not the goal. But we don't want them so comfortable, or you so comfortable, that you're not growing. And now if your student's going to CIP, you know, we have staff and there are people around to help with this transition. And just so you know, everyone on this call, many of you are parents, but there are some people who their student might be going somewhere else, or they're still in process, or they may be going on to work. So some of the things we're talking about are very specific to CIP, but some suggestions are for people who maybe their student isn't going to have as much structure and support and scaffolding as we have at CIP. So we really want the student to know that this is something they're going to go through so that they aren't taken off guard by it. So we know for sure that, as this next slide shows, that there is uncertainty ahead, and that of course is often an area that can tend to make us a little bit anxious. One of the things that really helps students, and we do this a lot in wellness and in different areas of the program, is to help teach students ways to help soothe or bring down their anxiety. And one of the most helpful is actually simple breathing exercises. We know that if you take the time to slow down, take a few deep breaths, that it actually helps us to think more clearly and to calm down. So this is something that each of us can do, and you too as parents, when you're feeling anxious in this next step. So the next slide is a little bit of a cartoon Matt will share with you that I know I can relate to, and maybe you can too.
So if you can't read it, I'll read it for you. We're trying to reconcile her needs for independence with our ability to run her life better than she does. This summer, I was working with a student the first day. We give the students what to bring lists, but then on the first day, obviously, either the students are packing for themselves, maybe forget something, or the parents are packing for the students and forget something. I always plan a Target trip. And we're going on a Target trip, and just from interviewing the student and working with him before he came to the program, I kind of knew his goals a little bit. He wanted to work on money management, impulse buying. So we're at Target, we're going around, the students are all over the place, and getting the things we need. So I'm at the register working with a couple of the other students, and then I see him kind of struggling. Let him do his thing. He finally pays, and then comes over, and he was really upset with himself. He purchased a $100 iTunes gift card, and he knew it was an impulse buy, and it was one thing that he wanted to do. And inside I'm thinking, this is perfect. This is a teachable moment. We went back. We came up with a plan. So what are the steps to get to where you want to be? You want to go back and change this, but what are some of the things that we need to do? So we came up with a plan. We looked at the schedule. When would it be an appropriate time for staff to take them back, return it, and then probably let his parents know, because he used a debit card to purchase it, that, look, I made a mistake. I know what I need to do to fix it. I've advocated for myself, talking with staff, and this is what I'm going to do next. So that was, a home run. The students aren't going to, we need to have these teachable moments, and the staff are there to support them. That's what we're here for.
Right, and in terms of teachable moments, as you'll see on the next slide, again, if you can go to the balcony as a parent, because they are going to make mistakes. Again, the only way we can learn is often either being somewhat uncomfortable, or we make mistakes as we're learning, and that's part of our growth. So if we can pause as adults and the student and take that view from the balcony, meaning, again, it's a teachable moment rather than this is a disaster that the student just spent half of their spending money on something they didn't need. So again, if you can pause and see it as a time that the student can learn something new and take ownership for what they did do and change it. To stay calm as much as you can in these situations, and to remember that with us at CIP, we're working as a team and as a staff and as a team with you to help your student when they do make mistakes. They will have failures even with all the support we have, because that's part of life, but we're here to help them shift so that it isn't an all-out mess. And this is where they're going to learn some positive changes that they can do for themselves. And the other thing is that these things are going to keep occurring, because as we learn, we get new challenges. Things will be a little harder in that next challenge, so we want to remember that with each new learning, there's going to be other ones coming up, and it's part of the process, and it's actually very exciting, and it means in the big picture they're going to be getting closer and closer to being more autonomous and able to handle these moments of challenge. So we're going to talk just briefly, again, this is from Brian Hark from UCLA. I'm going to cover it briefly, but I want you to know as a parent that there are typical stages of what we call letting go. And again, you're not letting go for life. You're going to be their parent. You're there for them. You're supporting them. But it is a big shift from that daily parenting to space and separation and them taking more ownership. So the first stage is you will feel disoriented, and so will your student, because things are so different now that they're away. And again, it might make you anxious, so to be aware of your own anxiety so you don't inflict it on your student or maybe your own worrying. The second stage, and you might remember this in your own life, maybe if you've moved to a new place, is to be reoriented, meaning you start to get oriented to the new place and get more comfortable with it. And then the third stage is what we would call the new normal, which is that delightful place where the student now has hit their stride. They may and will hit bumps, but they're really comfortable in their new place, and you start to have a new normal too, of not having your student at home with you and not parenting them every single day or every time something comes up. And again, these phases can go forward a step, back a step, forward a step, back a step a little bit. It's not like a clear cut. Each stage is, completely separate. And the next stage is about starting early, and I'll have Matt cover this with you. And just remember, again, if you haven't done it yet, the opportunity still lies ahead.
Yeah, like Margaret said, there's still time to start doing these things. Reinforce responsible behavior. Waking up early. In all of our programs, we're working with the students on coming up with different techniques with either using a phone or using a clock. And one thing, I was just talking with Margaret about it, is having a reason to get out of bed early. I was working with a student this summer, and we were talking about his schedule. I was picking him up from the airport, and we're driving down. I was like, well, so what is your normal schedule like? He was telling me, go to bed at around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, wake up at 1, 2 o'clock. I'm like, your day's half gone. And he's like, well, there's no reason. I don't have a reason to wake up early, so why would I wake up early? And he made a good point. So having a reason to wake up early, not just saying you need to wake up early, and then writing those reasons down so it's there. I can see them. Whether it is for class or the student's favorite, time for reframing, 8 o'clock in the morning classes, or work, internships, because I need to do my laundry, have a reason. Make sure that you're getting enough sleep, go to bed early. Or one thing that I always do, because hitting alarm or hitting the snooze button never works for me, because I just keep hitting it. So I put my alarm far away, and then I jump out of bed. So if I jump, the blood's starting to move through my body, and I can't fall asleep after. So that's kind of some of the techniques that I do. Be prepared to see less of your child. One of the closing ceremonies this summer, a parent came up to me and said, is my student ready to go to college on his own? I was talking with him. I said, he has all the skills that he needs, but one thing that he has a lot of trouble with, and I would be concerned with, is waking up. He can't wake up in the mornings on his own. So that's a big thing. So start laying it down now. Begin early and work with the student. And when they come to our program, so that's some of our services. With me, I was in Long Beach for the past couple weeks. 7:30 in the morning, I'm, knocking on the door, getting the kids up. And then after 3 or 4 days, I'll let the students fail. So I will wait 20 minutes and then go to the rooms and knock and see if they're up and ready. But if they're not, they know that they need to stick to the schedule, and we're going to go at breakfast at 8:15, so they have less time to get ready.
So we know, and that changes are coming, and to start preparing. And once they also go to the new environment, and if it's CIP, or if they're going to college, there's going to be just a whole energy inviting and asking of them to be making these changes. So we want them to be open to it. And there's some things that you still can do beforehand. And in the next slide, it's called prepping ahead in the months before leaving. So what you want to make sure is talk about with your student safety or emergency plans in terms of, if the students say got sick, what would they do? If they're not at CIP and they're going to a college campus, do they know where? I've heard many stories of students who didn't know where to go when they were sick. At CIP, we have a medical coordinator. We help with those pieces. But again, even on the college campus, it's good to know for those students at CIP, where can they go if something happens when they're not on our program's location, but when they're on at the college or at work. What are different resources they can use? So one of the big things, say with the book, The Naked Roommate, when they go to college, what are the clubs they might want to join? Maybe there's a computer club, or there's some special interest they have that exists. So they know ahead of time to go and start participating in that. And what are the resources they can go and get in addition to the ones that they're going to get, say, from CIP, or if they're in a program. Health and well-being, I mentioned that a little bit. Communication plan, I'm going to get into more depth in just a few, in a few slides down. But one really important thing that you do want to talk about with your student is, I'm sure you've had this with either your own child or someone in your family. You send a text or you call someone and they never respond. And that is a sure recipe for making us anxious. We're wondering, why aren't they responding? Is everything okay? You start to worry. And so one of the communication plans is agree to respond, especially if it's by text or social media, by saying, got it, I got it. Respond later, or just so that they don't need to respond a big long way, and you don't need to respond in a big long way, because sometimes students complain a parent doesn't respond either. It goes both ways. But say, I got it, because we find that students can get really anxious, or parents, of course, when you don't hear back, you start to wonder if everything's okay. And then the next one is for that actual day that you're going to take them for orientation. You want to think about that. What kind of goodbye are you going to have? So there are two extremes. There's the extreme of, I feel like my mom did this with me. She was so sort of like, okay, well, goodbye, as though, I don't know, like she was saying goodbye to me for the afternoon. And it didn't feel like quite enough for me. But I'm sure it was her way of trying to handle the goodbye. Or the other extreme, a colleague of mine, not at CIP, but another program, talked about parents were all to have left. They went to, see where this one student was who hadn't joined the activity. And the mom and the student were on the bed, lying down, hugging. So that's kind of the other extreme. You don't want to make it so painful and hard for your student that it's even more emotional than it needs to be, and maybe making it more anxiety-producing or more stressful. So a plan for goodbyes, meaning that kind of right balance of connection and love, and or not being so dramatic either. And of course, as a mom like I was, you might get choked up. I did. But again, you want to be aware, what is this experience like for your child? So think about what it's going to be like for them. So resilience, I have a question for you. And this might help you again in holding the picture, the view from the balcony. A lot of times, before I get to the question, a lot of times, again, we want to jump in and give our student the answer when they call and say, how should I do this? Or what should I do with this? Or they're very upset about something. And if you can, it's really important, again, to pause and think about, in your own experience, when you've had a challenging situation, and it may be something that went on for a while, like when you first got to college or something that happened, how did you persevere? What skills did you learn, and how did you build resilience through that hard experience? As parents, it's really hard to watch our students struggle. I know it is for me. But if I can, again, hold that picture of this is maybe a resilience building opportunity. So hold on to, the question for you is, when did you have a hard time, and it might have lasted for a while, and what skills or capacities did you learn and persevere with? And I invite you to take this question and examine it in more detail after this, after our discussion tonight. And go back to it when your child is struggling a little bit. And I'm not saying don't support them, that's not what I mean. But remembering that challenge does build resilience. Quickly, in my own experience, I did Peace Corps, and I would definitely say it was the hardest experience of my life at that point, for sure. But I learned so much about myself, and also about that I could handle that kind of a change, and I had more strength than I thought I did. And so since then, I've lived in other countries 2 other times, and it's helped me to be able to handle that, to know, oh, here's the pattern of what it feels like. So look at your own resilience in your life, and remember that when your student struggles, this is an opportunity for them to build resilience with support from you and from staff. So again, there's the same old way, and there's something new coming ahead, and we want to be building from the old ways into new ways for positive growth. We also want to remember, in the next slide, we have a picture of these 2 dogs, and remember that you're not in it alone. You're not the only one who needs to help support. You've got all this supported CIP. We have a lot of different departments, academic, we have advising, we have medical, many areas. But even if they're not going to CIP, to remember to build on the team. You don't want to be the only source of support, that there are other people at the college or at the workplace to support your student. We all do better. We're really none of us completely independent. We all have people who support us as we make changes and grow in our lives. So in terms of the disorientation, just quickly, I talked a little about it's a loss of your normal role that you've been used to maybe for 18 or 20 years. That's a pretty big shift. It's easy to get stuck in this disorientation, and I want you to remember that the goal is not to stop being a parent. That's no one is ever asking you to do that, but to evolve to be a parent who empowers your son or daughter. And what I mean by that is maybe to be more of a coach and to ask really thoughtful questions, and we're almost on the verge of that part. So keep in mind that your role is really to help them come to some decisions on their own with your support. So some of you may feel in the week like this little cartoon picture of the bird when you come home at first and your student isn't there. If they haven't been away at school or away for long summers, what am I supposed to do now? And if you're being so involved, to try to shift, not connected, but to shift what are some of the other things you're going to do for yourself to support you, so that you can be that great coach and support for your student, but doing it in a new way. I think I'm just going to go through this quickly. So disorientation also includes breaking some of those patterns of dependence toward moving toward independence. The exciting part, and I can vouch for it, and maybe some of you, you've had several other children go through this process, a new relationship does evolve. It's so exciting to see them take ownership and start to be more autonomous, to make decisions for themselves, to be able to cook for themselves. It was a big worry I had for my daughter because she went right off also at 18 to cook for herself. But to see that they do it is so exciting, and it does change your relationship with them in a very positive way. And again, you're going to have a little disorientation with each change. So it's an opportunity to keep moving with it and try not to get stuck. So we're going to move into the next part, which is about that communication once both this summer, but also once the student is off at college or off at CIP or whatever program they're at. So I'm holding up the book that you see a picture of, and it's called The Eye-Connected Parent, Staying Close to Your Kids in College and Beyond While Letting Them Grow Up. And before I forget, there is a chapter in here about working with students who have physical disabilities or health challenges or students with a learning difference. So there is a very specific chapter on it, and I encourage you to take a look. But I'm going to ask you a question now. Excuse me. I want you to guess, and this is from the book by Barbara Hofer and Abigail Sullivan Moore, how many times do you think parents and their college student communicate per week?
2.
So write that down. No, it's not 2. Write down how many times you think. And when I say that, I mean by text, like a texting session, or by social media, by cell phone. How many times do you think? So write that down. So the number is, I didn't put it on a slide, the number is for girls or females, it's 13 times a week. And for boys, it's about 14. And actually, these are statistics from about 6 years ago. So my guess, it's not research, is it might even be higher now. And the interesting thing, as I said, is it's not that different between the girls and boys. And also, do you think it would change from, say, 18 when they're first year or 19, and when they graduate, when they're in their early 20s to mid 20s? Do you think that changes? So answer that question. And the surprising to me anyway was that it doesn't, because we get in the habit of communicating a certain way with our child or with the people we love, and we tend to keep doing that habit. And this is a huge shift in society, because most of you, if you're like me, we were in residence halls and dorms with, Matt probably didn't have this, but we had one hall phone for 30 or 40 students. And when I told my daughter that, she said, "That's crazy." She couldn't imagine such a thing. It's like I was from Mars. But anyway, we didn't have that opportunity to talk to our parents, so we, in a way, had to develop a little bit more of our own coping strategies. So the blessing is, it's great that we can be connected to our students. It's great that we can share stories. And there is some research to show that how you communicate and how often can have a negative impact on your students growing up and becoming more independent. You remember, you want to keep that big view of them becoming more independent. So the research shows that the more the communication, like you start going way high, that it's going to have put students in an indefinite hold. I'm going to go to that slide now, if you would, from becoming an autonomous adult. So onto the next, it's actually the next slide. So students who communicate a lot with their parents, and particularly when the parents communicate with the student a lot, it can have a big effect on slowing down that autonomy. Students who talk all the time to their parents tend to take longer to grow up. And we already know this population, it's going to be a longer road. And what we also know is that how you communicate. So if you're telling them the answers to all their questions, like, how should I do this? And you give them all the answers right up front. That's the way that it tends to slow them down. So I'll give you some examples in a minute. Also, when you let the student initiate some of the contact, they tended to fare better. In other words, if you're always hounding them, you're always chasing them, you're always texting, twittering, whatever, they tend to not make the leaps in independence. And we see this in our program, the students who take more ownership and are allowed to have the space to learn and do things and not be directed all the time by everyone, do make bigger leaps in their independence. So in that regard, hold that big picture in your head when you're about to make those calls. And I have some more tips here. So on the next slide, the higher the number of interactions a week, the longer it took for a student to become an independent, what do you think that is? Independent thinker. The higher the number of interactions, the longer it took for the student to become an independent, what do you think it is? Decision maker. And decision making is so important, especially when they move on to work, because they can't call you all day long once they go off to work to find out how to make, what decision to make in a job. An employer, a boss isn't going to like that. And lastly, that last word, what do you think that is? It takes them longer to become autonomous. So again, it's going to be a process for you, but we really want you to hold this in your mind. And I'm going to have Matt take the next couple of questions for you. But before I do that, I love what the word autonomous means. It means acting independently or having the freedom to do so. And I bet your students are chomping at the bit to have more freedom. But we want them to have freedom in ways that are healthy and they make good decisions. So synonyms are self-governing, self-ruling, self-determining. We use that word a lot at CIP. Independent, sovereign, like a king, meaning sovereign control over your own life, free or unmonitored. So I know your students want more of this, and I know you want more of it for them. So here are some questions.
So here's some questions for you parents. So are you acting as your child's prefrontal cortex, personal secretary or manager? How often do you nag? Is nagging a good thing or a bad thing? Are you worried that your teen will not wake up for class? With the summer program especially, this is a big thing that we work with the students on, and during the interview process we always ask the students, are you able to wake up? They say, yes, I am able to wake up. So what is being able to wake up? Well, my mom comes and wakes me up, so then therefore I am able to get up. So there's a difference in knowing, what that difference is. Do you see yourself calling your teen to ask if he or she is awake? So, same thing. Are you going to be calling your student? Come up with a plan now. Like we were talking about before, work on some strategies so then the expectations where it's, you need to start waking up 2 out of 5 days by yourself, and then maybe the second week 3 out of 5 days, and then coming up with, reasons to getting up. So then it's kind of second nature. Usually, I think the studies show that it takes 3 weeks for a skill.
3 to 4 weeks for you to have a new habit.
To have a new habit.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. That's why we tell you to start now, so then the student can start to develop those skills or habits. We would be texting your teen to remind him to take his medicine. It's a big question that we do during our interviews. Is the student self-medicated? Oh yeah, Matt. I'm self-medicated. My mom puts it on the table for me at 8 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and 3 o'clock. So it's there, but I take it. So there's a difference. That's not being really self-medicated. So we work with the students on, setting reminders on your cell phone. How to fill your Medi set, your Sunday to Sunday. With the summer program, we have the students bring 2 Medi sets, and we have executive functioning charts, which help the students so much with, because they're in a new routine. So we have a executive functioning checklist for their hygiene and for their medication. So once they take their medication, they can, check it off. So, in case they forget, they can just either go to their Medi set and look and see, yep, I did take it for this time, or they can look on their executive functioning checklists, and those help tremendously. Because it's, even with me being in a new situation, a new routine, you just forget things, especially if you have trouble with that anyway. So those are some things. So some other questions for you parents. On to the next slide. Do you see yourself calling your student every day about his classes or homework? We went to the study where we said that there was 14 interactions a week with a parent and a student. So if we're calling each day for the medications 2 or 3 times, homework 2 or 3 times, waking up 2 or 3 times, how much is that just in that one day? Mm-hmm. And we were talking about the effects that has on the student. So do you see yourself contacting your child's advisor to let her know what your child needs? So each student at our program has an advisor. I know the advisors check in with the families every other week, I believe. Mm-hmm. So twice a month. So that's one way to check in on your student.
I'm just going to say one thing. So originally when I put that question in, it was more like the college advisor, which is very different from a CIP advisor who you do speak with, like we said, about every other week. And we want you to have a relationship with them. But at a college, the advisor at the college or university, they don't want you contacting them. So that's where you need to have other strategies or people like our staff who help the students with advocating for themselves rather than you being that person. So sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make that clear. Go ahead.
No, that's exactly right. And are you worried that if you're not organizing your child's work, that he will not be able to manage on his own? So at CIP, we have a lot of staff that work with the students in their apartments, with their coursework, with their internships. So that's what we're here to support them.
Right. So what are you going to ask? So at CIP, we're giving those supports or those scaffoldings to help the student take more ownership. But if they're not at a program like CIP, you can't. If you're doing all that as a parent, first off, it's just so overwhelming for you, and you've worked so hard in high school to help them get that far. But by college, you want to back off, and so you want to make sure there's other professionals who help your student if they need these kind of supports, which they may well need, and there's no judgment in that. It's that you want the student to be using other people so that, again, that space and independence can emerge because they're doing it more on their own and with somebody who there's just sort of not that push-pull that you have with your own child.
With the communication, contacting the student multiple times this summer, one of my students was getting phone calls every night from his mother, and it kind of set him back. It was putting a lot of stress and pressure on him, and each time I could see him getting really worked up. And it almost did, checking in here and there is great, but it almost put him in a negative spiral where he wasn't able to really participate after he got off the phone in the evening activities, playing apples to apples or doing monologues and doing all these fun activities that he enjoyed. But after being on the phone with his mom for a half hour, 45 minutes, he just needed to go to bed and kind of clear his mind, which was, wasn't good for his socialization. Kind of took him 2 steps back instead of 2 steps forward.
Right, right. So again, we want you to think about the impact of when you are trying to help. We know it's always meant from that place. But again, is it helping them build skills, or is it actually, making them anxious because you're a little bit or stressed? So ask these questions of yourself before you engage in some of the sort of constant checking in. So on the next slide, as parents, we've spent years, many of us, thinking about colleges coming up, and you may or may not have prepared yourself for them. But the one area that I think most of us have not really thought about, which I've already introduced, is that you do have instant access to your child through your cell phone and social media. And again, like I said, we didn't have this as parents when most of us went through this stage. So it's something we haven't given probably enough thought about, how we're going to engage and what is the most supportive way to help your student, but also to help you too. Like, what's going to make that relationship strong between you? Because you want to have that great connection with them, not being not always being the person nagging or worrying. So if we go to the next slide, This is just a slide, actually, that cracks me up. Weapons of mass distraction. Sometimes they distract us more than they help. They pull us off focusing on what needs to be done. So just a little humor there. But in the next slide, you might be in a really powerful habit, most of us are, of being in touch with your teen or young adult, your maybe early 20-something, multiple times a day, as Matt was saying, by electronic communication. So what I want to do is invite you to, with this next slide, set an intention and decide how often to communicate. Just so you know, that banner is from a book that I just liked the title, and I actually don't have the book talks about the 4-step plan. But here, what I'm talking about is setting, like again, push the pause button before they go. Set an intention, decide how often to communicate. And in addition, you want to talk about, we go to the next slide, it's not just about you setting an intention. Talk to your student. Ask them, how often would you like to communicate? And by what method? You might be surprised. My own daughter told me, like, you're not texting me when I go to college unless it's emergency. So I generally don't, unless there's something, sometimes something really funny I might share with her, but generally not. She prefers I do it other ways. So I try to honor that, and we both accept that. There are times when there's something urgent that I need to be in touch with her about that's important. So this is something you want to talk about. And I think someone had a question about this beforehand. You can be flexible about. So you can set an intention, you can set a plan, and then revise it. So we'll go to the next slide on this. I want you, I'm actually going to invite you to do this right now, but I want you to continue doing it when you get off this, when we get off tonight. So what are your personal stats? If your child is in college or not yet, or how many times a day and week are you in touch? So why don't you find that out? So just tonight, so that you keep listening to us, I don't want you to get off. Guess how many times, you text or call. Like, just let's jot some down. Like, guess how many times you call, text, or some other social media. And then go back and check. Actually, go look, because we can actually do that these days. We can see. And you might be pleased, you might not be, or you might be surprised. And then this is this invitation to make some new habits. And we'll talk about a little bit what kinds of questions, which we're going to do now. So the 4 steps on the next slide.
Before we go, do you know what yours was before your daughter and after?
That's a really good question.
Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, don't put me on the spot. I know I stopped calling a lot less. We decided on once a week, which was hugely challenging and different. She went overseas, which in some ways helped support me in this because she was farther away. But with this research, actually, honestly, it changed the way I would have been. It's so seductive to be in touch all the time. I would have been in touch way more, even being a transition coordinator. So yeah, I did cut back. Every time I would email, I would think about how is this going to impact her, and also does this support her in her independence. One of the other things that you can do that you can really be connected, and it's not taking away, it's adding to your relationship, is share the funny things that are happening at home. The dog did something funny today. Usually your children love those stories. So rather than nagging them, tell them something kind of fun to share, or something your grandma did, and do include them in what's going on in your life. We don't want you. Students also get upset with the other extreme, where parents aren't sharing what's going on to a certain level. Not every detail, but what's happening. So here are the questions. Do you want your teen to learn how to become autonomous? And I'm sure you're all saying yes. Do you want your teen to be able to advocate for himself or herself? And I'm pretty sure you do. And do you want your teen to learn how to make good decisions? So I have this speed dial symbol because we want you to pause and think about these questions before you push the speed dial. And Matt, you're making me think I should go back and look, but I know I did cut back. So again, when you go back to this, the next slide, which is that picture again of going to the balcony, like keeping that big picture, the big picture of autonomy, you know, the big picture of them learning how to self-advocate. And if we go to the next picture, so our students and even all of us in the areas we're not strong, we do need support. So it's not that you don't need support, but when are we overdoing it, a little like this picture, and when is it really totally legitimate and appropriate? So these are thoughtful things you want to think about before you push that speed dial or before you answer and tell them what to do. What we want you to do instead is, on the next slide, ask good questions. Okay, so what you're going to do, instead of giving advice or unwelcome advice, ask them if they say, I don't know what to do, I don't know if I should, you know, talk to so-and-so about this or not. Say, well, what have you done so far? That might be one way to start. Or what do you think? And they might snap at you. They might say, that's why I'm asking you, I don't know why. But that's part of you pausing and being the adult and letting them think into it or feel into it before you give them the answers. And actually, my daughter did do some of this. Sometimes she'd get annoyed with me. Like, I know you're not going to, you know, you're not supposed to give me the answer, but couldn't you just tell me? And I really resisted, and honestly, she's made so much, she's taken so much over in her own life in terms of decisions, so I guarantee you'll be happy if you do this. So hold these questions in your heart before communicating. Is it going to help them? And ask them, what have you done, or what do you think you could do, or who could you talk to, rather than just me. So it's okay, they're calling you for support, but who else could you talk to? If it were summer program, you would say, did you talk to Matt? Or, you know, at CIP, did you talk to your advisor? Did you talk to the medical coordinator? So these are the questions we want you to start to get in the habit of. These are your new habits, to ask good questions and ask them, what did they think? How could they problem solve the situation? And then if they're really stumped, of course you can give them, you know, suggestions and alternatives, but rather than impulsively telling them what to do. This is the difference. And often we give advice before they really want it or before it's welcome. So hold on to that as well. And it doesn't help our staying connected. It tends to hurt our relationships with our children. So okay, go on to the next. So, you know, it's not easy. This is actually a joke, just stop nagging. But I think we've all experienced as parents, our students are tuning us out because we nagged. I'm sure there's no parent of a teenager or young adult who hasn't nagged. It's part of the process. But to find different ways than just nagging. You know, again, asking questions, saying, oh, so today, you know, this is on your to-do list. So I'm going to, you know, here it is, go on to it, you know, instead of just checking all the time. And again, remember, use the other team to help have more of that role, to be the ones to check in rather than just you. You have other people on your team to help with that role. So remember that. So we'll go on to the last. So reorientation, you're adjusting and redefining the roles that you have together, and you're coming up with new routines. You're coming up with new boundaries. So it's not all about you. In the past, as parents, it was for us to be their guardians all the time, to be setting the boundaries for them. Now the boundaries shift a little. There's going to be a lot of trial and error. And in a way, you have to embrace this, and this is the uncomfortable part of trial and error, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. You're going to want to fix it. It's natural. It's because it's what we've done as parents. Try to, again, ask those good questions. And remember, as Matt said, even in 2 weeks, it's amazing the change that happens to our students when they go away to summer program. Imagine the change of a whole semester when they build their self-confidence by taking more ownership of making decisions for themselves or with great guidance of the staff who are there to help them. Go on to the next one. So there's a new normal, just really quickly, accepting a new framework. There's going to be new patterns of independence, new roles, and the student taking more ownership. So it's a little bit the same concept of what we just went over with reorientation. And to the next slide, you know, we want you, whether you're on your own as a parent, as a single parent, or you're partnering with someone as parents, we want you to have more fun. It actually is an opportunity to have some more time and have more fun for yourselves. And that may be hard to imagine because it's hard to let go when you're worried the student might fall on their face. But really start to focus in on some things that you could do in those spaces where before you were always checking on your student. And we have a few things just to go over tonight. You know, the new normal is going to be that opportunity for them to reconnect with you, with friends and other family in a new way, to cultivate new interests, both for the student and for yourself, and maybe for yourself rekindle some old things you used to love to do and you just haven't had time in your life. These are opportunities now to do it. It's an invitation to have some things that you love to do, and actually your student loves to hear that you have a life. They actually are happy to know that you have other interests in addition to them. It actually supports their independence, that you have a life that is rich, that has other things that are meaningful for you in addition to them. And you can reframe and focus on all the positives. We do so much at CIP. We don't have time for it tonight. We do want to do more of these kinds of things because we only covered one piece of this transition process tonight. But one of the things we didn't get to do a lot of, and you may have some questions about, are, oh, I forgot, some of the tools, just to review, you know, pause. Remember, this is a really hard, you might need to stick sticky notes in your drawers, in your wallet, on the dashboard of your car to pause when something's upsetting you or you feel yourself starting to get worried or stressed. Breathe. Start to use some of those breathing exercises we didn't get to do tonight, but it allows for new solutions for you, and it allows for new solutions for the student when they learn this skill. It gives that space for a different answer to come up. We want to reframe and focus on the positive. And in terms of, I was going to go to the next slide as well. Packing, you are going to, if your student's coming to CIP, you will very soon be getting that orientation packet. Don't worry, you're probably worrying, where is it? It's on its way, we're finishing it. A few very basic tips, but you know, less is more. Matt can tell you that, maybe just quickly what you were saying about the packing to me earlier.
So with the parents, with the summer program, it seems like that, you know, in the acceptance packets, like Margaret was saying, that you'll be getting it shortly. With the summer program and full year program, we send a list of recommended items to bring. So, you know, bring enough clothes for the first week, bring an alarm clock, bring a cell phone. You're going to have an extra long twin bed. You know, we have
extra long twin sheets. A lot of people have this question, so you can get those if you
don't
have.
So with the dorms, you know, we provide the linens. You know, should you bring a towel? You know, we provide all that. So the parents seem to pack more often than the student packs. So when the student gets to the program, they might not even realize that they've forgotten something. They're in a new situation, it's out of routine, they might not even realize it. One of the students this summer, it was about 3 days, the student lost their deodorant, and you know, we started to, you know, pick up on that, like, oh, you know, hey, did you find your, you know, you might want to go,
stinky.
Yeah, go freshen up. And he just never brought it. So, you know, on that first day, he didn't even know that he forgot something because he didn't pack it to begin with.
Right.
So,
right.
You know, building those muscles or skills and allow your students to pack for him or herself.
Right, because at the end of the term, they're actually going to have to pack up again, or they come home for a weekend. So I do want to clarify, Matt was talking about the summer program, we provide linens, but for the year-round, they do bring their own sheets, and the extra large single or twin is what you do need. So going on to some questions, and it seems like we filled up pretty much most of the hour. We'll take just a few. We don't want to keep you late. We respect your time. We want to really, if your student's coming or you're still considering CIP, call your admissions coordinator if there are questions we haven't answered tonight. So if you're already working with someone at one of our 6 centers, please call them. That's what they're there for, and they are really your transition person when they're coming into CIP until your student meets his or her advisor, and you meet them at orientation as well. As I said, orientation packets are on the way with lists and what's next. So hold on tight. I know it's hard to do that. If you really can't, call the admissions coordinator. They can answer some of these questions if you're feeling the need to know a couple things you need to bring. What other questions and support do you need with departure and letting go? You know, we want to do more of these sessions that will give you more support, and then, as I said, our staff are here to support you. So the initial first contact is going to be your admissions coordinator at the site your student is attending or is considering attending. So I'm going to end with a quote, and then we will take a couple questions. And we do want to say this is a recording. Each of you are welcome to it. If any of you wanted to just hear the complete story I was telling you about my own drop-off day for my daughter, I'm happy to send that. Just you can send me an email. And if you have questions, do be in touch. So, so this is from a movie some of you may have seen, The Lunchbox. Sometimes the wrong train will get you to the right station. So what does that mean? It really means that sometimes things go awry, and sometimes we get on the wrong train and things don't happen as we thought they would, but it does tend to work out. And again, this idea of teachable moments, really hold that in your mind, because this is where the growth happens, and some exciting things happen that you don't expect. So we're really grateful for you being here tonight. We hope that we've answered questions. We hope we've been helpful. And let's take a couple questions now. And again, do be in touch with the admissions coordinator. If you have questions for Matt or myself, feel free to email us. We do have some resources at the end here that we can share with you as well. So go ahead, Matt.
So one of the questions we have here is, what are some resources to assist my daughter in maintaining a social life after leaving the controlled environment of CIP?
So some of the things we were thinking about was, obviously some of the special interests that your student has had when they've been at CIP, to continue on with those, and knowing if your student's moving to a new area, what are the supports in the area and what are the interests your student has that she or he can connect with before even arriving. So if they're not, some of our students, they love where they are so much. At the center they're at, they stay on in that community because they do have friends, because they do have support. I also found that many students, when I did transition, found that it was super helpful to have a life coach to continue to work with them, or to continue working with a therapist, because it's the way that they can help problem solve for themselves in a daily or weekly way. So that's a first answer. You certainly can also check back with some of the people that supported your student on some ideas in that area too, or the program director.
I know with the summer program, a lot of the students, like I said before, during the 2-week program and with the full year program, they're gaining confidence for social situations. So before coming into the summer program and the full year program, they were less, they wouldn't jump into social situations because they didn't have as much experience. But being with CIP and the summer program, they've had a lot more practice and they feel more comfortable, putting themselves out of their comfort zone and getting into newer situations. My son, who will start CIP next week, has failed numerous times in the past, academically, socially, developmentally. What does CIP work with students to prevent more failures, which are potentially damaging to their psyches?
So maybe you have some answers with this too, but this is really, many of our students have had this pattern. This is why they are coming to CIP, is because there is a whole support team to help the student. So again, there will be some mistakes. We can't stop all of that, but we are definitely here to help, like Matt was saying with that first story about the student who was impulsive and bought something, to help them break it into steps, how they can change their patterns, how they can change their thinking, and how they can approach things in new ways. And that's what's so exciting. There's so many staff who love to do this for your student. They're here to help with that and break it into steps. And when things do go wrong, to say again, stop and say, okay, so how can we approach this so that it becomes a learning experience rather than something that really hurts you know, again, your sense of self, your self-esteem, and your psyche, as this parent says. So we're trying to move from that to a sense of confidence to handle it. Anything you want to add to that? Okay. I think we're going to stop there because it's late for many of you, and it's been a full evening. And we thank you so much for coming tonight, and we hope it's been useful, and thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye for now.
Have a great night.